Come in for the next deep dive into CPX. I chose this stage because I want to learn something about CPX finally. It's not yet another component language. Right, thanks very much for joining. First reminder, if you're interested in giving a lightning talk, please get in touch with Anke so she knows of your plans. Second thing, most of you already have figured out, if you want to ask a question, please submit them via the app. That's the easiest one for me to prepare in asking Marc Henry afterwards. Yeah, and then please welcome on stage Marc Henry with his purely presentational CPX component language. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for showing up to the second talk. And this was the slide of the first talk. Let's scroll up a little further. And this is, in conclusion to our first talk, the integration patterns and how to use CPX in NEOS. So I do kind of expect you to have seen the first talk, though I will do a small recap of what CPX is. CPX is a new written language which can be used for building presentational components. That will be the recap. Then we will talk about nested components, a little bit about advanced CPX, like component instantiation and the type system and type component lists, and all the design limitations and how basic NEOS integration will be used. There will be a live demo after the first 10 minutes. So let's do the quick recap and then dive into all the other parts. First, for all of you, CPX is a new typed language. It is pure and satisfactory, immutable, replaceable, and truly reusable. We will come back to that later, but I already hinted that it can be used everywhere, not just in PHP, but eventually in other frameworks as well. It is fully strictly typed. There is no way of bypassing any types, no mixed, nor any. There are only code paths for the path that should be allowed, and everything else is caught at static analysis time and will not even transpile to PHP. So there will be, that is our claim, no runtime exceptions ever in the presentational model, because we would not allow the code to compile otherwise. It is pure and satisfactory. There's this fully strict, impenetrable separation from the integration. You cannot fire a single SQL query from CPX. No data transformation and anything. So to revoke the simple component from what we have seen down below already, this is a CPX component. This is the language I want to show you. These are just ASCII files in a simple CPX file, and we call them also modules because this is closely influenced by the ESM module standards when we look at imports later. And we see that there is all the type props, and there's a render statement with some class concatenation as well as the content interpolation. There is automatic escaping, just having said that in case you're using Fusion. So the text component will be transpiled to this PHP. This time I don't leave out any parts. First, we have a private constructor that is just internal implementation detail because we can use the public constructor later. And you can see there is no framework dependency except our component engine package, which is a zero dependency from Composer. This is the static create function. It instantiates an instance, and here we can set simple default, but also handle our component instantiation, which is actually a bit tricky. Maybe you can ask me about that after the talk. This is the render method, which is transpiled, which just handles the ugly, I'd say, PHP concatenation, but it is highly efficient And as we generate this code, you can trust us that this is correct, and everything is kept. So let's talk a little bit about nested components, because this is something that is quite often used in Fusion. If we think about a simple image, which has the following props, source, alt, title, caption, class, and if we were to now use it in an image, if we were now to look at a text component, which is consisting of text and class, and want to combine them together, in a text with image component, we might be tempted to write this. Just copy all the props from one class and from the other class, or prototype, and then you're happy, right? Have you seen the little class below? There is a little ambiguity there. Where does it map to now? Is it the image or is it the text? I decided it's the image, but how should the integrator know? Before we start prefixing these props now with text or image, you might be tempted to use just nested data structures and arrays. And that kind of works, but it's also super verbose if you think about prop types, which you would need to make it type safe. So the instantiation looks like this then. You all have seen that code. It's nothing new. And it's just not that straightforward. There is no actual static analysis here. You cannot be sure of anything happening, of props being missed out. You don't have actual validation, just a little prop types if you use them. And also these are probably getting really verbose, as you have the prop types for each text component, as well as for the composed components as well, where you copy and paste all the props from the nested components. And then someone wants to use a text with image component in another component. Have fun with dealing that. So, and this is just runtime validation with all the effort. You don't even get static analysis. So a lot of pain for still bugs at runtime. How about we try CPX? We still have the same text as before. We have a new image as before. It's closely resembling the Fusion examples. There's nothing special about that. I left out the render part. It's not important. And our CPX text with image now looks quite different from what we used to with Fusion. We don't need to pass arguments along. We don't even need to instantiate the component here in the render function. We could do that, but a way more promoted pattern in CPX is to just pass the components along. And this is possible due to the self-rendering nature. That is a little bit, for me it's now easy to understand, but I think no other language does this prominently. Neither React, nor Fusion, nor Go's Temple. Everything we know usually takes a function, claims to be kind of pure, and then produces output immediately. In the produced output, though, we often have just in Fusion a string, in React and React element, and just a generic thing, but not the typed information as well. In CPX, if you look at this type instantiation, we do have the types, because these are still just objects. They were not rendered at all. They will be eventually in the rendering. So that was a little bit introduction of what's about to change if you would use CPX from the shift. Let's get a little into this type system. There is just the usual types, you know, string, int, bool, null. Enums, you can define them. That is cool. You don't do that in Fusion. No typed enums there. You do have structs and DTOs, basically DTOs. You don't need them that often, but they are just the props shape, basically, if you want to pass them along. If you don't want to pass the component along, usually you don't want that. You want to pass components along instead of lots of props. Then we have the components itself, or a list of components. These are first-level sentences, as explained earlier, and we have slots, which is basically a possibility to pass anything renderable, which is either a string or a component or a list of components. This allows a wrapper concept. So, as I said earlier also, no bypasses, no shortcuts. So let me conclude now. CPX is for presentation only, just for query data, just to calculate, not query data, not calculate data, and no manual iterations or set complex details. You might be wondering now how we do integration now with Fusion and now with Neos, because you kind of are used to still do that all in one language, currently named Fusion. But let me say, well, there is an alternative ahead. A small package in the package factory namespace, which is resisting the urge to use Fusion. And we will dive into a direct demo now. So, This is my setup. We installed the component engine, the Neos component engine, and the component view, which replaces the node controller. And it adds an own controller to handle all the things. And at first, this looks normal. No, this is not normal. There's a new folder, components. Look here. And you might be surprised or not, but you will find exactly the examples, kind of, that we had earlier. Text, an image. And they are directly here transpiled with PHP. So if I were to delete that file here and run now flow components build, I see a new file popping up, which is the same as before. So we see that it works. We take the CPX, analyze it, pass it, and transpile it to Fusion. There is not much of a configuration necessary, actually none, but I specified I re-specified the default to be explicit. We load the components from components, and this is my namespace. You might be wondering, components, there are PP classes now, and other classes, how does it work? Well, I just added a new PSR autoload. That's as simple as that. And if we go further, you can see there's a second one for the node types folder. So maybe you know where this direction will be going. And indeed, there are a few new things in our node types. Nothing auto-generated, but if we look at here, there's a text YAML, we know, and co-located quite nicely the text renderer. I'll give you some time, but it's not that much here happening. It's a new factory. It's we call it rather renderer to be more precise. It implements the content node renderer interface, which is our contract, and it has a render as content function. There we pass the Neos context, which is basically the site, the document, and the node, as well as some other details. Let's get into that later. And the contract is to return just a component. In the other case, we compose already two things together, the container, because we want some spacing, and text. So if we look at that now, we should also see that it runs quite nicely and looks like an image, a text. Naja. Ta-da, somewhere is text. Trust me. This is my website. So far, so clear. So simple as that. Quite precise, right? No need for anything. Well, if you look at it more closely, this is not in your editor, right? We just use node get property text. If we were to go to the backend, we will see that there is just like in Fusion qnode property text. That doesn't work. We need a little bit more help still. And that brings me to the whole concept of, wait, we don't actually have an RPE to do all those things. We never were in the place where there was something else except Fluid and Fusion to use it to generate the markup for Neos. And we do need something for that now, and for that we have a new interface, or new implementation, which wraps all the Neos services because they are just everywhere. And they allow all the things that Fusion usually does natively by core. And one of these things is obviously the editable implementation. You are probably familiar with these values. It is 100% the same as Neos Fusion, Neos editable. So no surprises here, but you might be interested at what else is hiding in this class. And there's quite a lot to cover, but not that much, really, because you should be familiar with all these concepts. Either they were a PHP, a Fusion object in Fusion, or they might also have been an EEL helper, like these two colleagues. But I grouped them all together and try to extract the important use cases to write them down here. So we have something for URI building, for the action URI. We have something to get the editable. This is actually a component interface, because we don't want escaping here. If we were to return a string, it would be double encoded. We do have the node URI. We have a backend node URI. We have some try resolve link URI, convert URIs, and some general things on the access interface. That covers the basic parts of Fusion. There's not image source rendering incorporated yet. That's yet to come, but you're free to choose your own services to do something if you desire already. So now we have covered a simple node and a simple editable. Let's look a little bit more into how maybe a document is rendered, because that is a little more complex. But if you should show you that, it's actually not too complex. And you might come to wonder, what have we been doing all this time? Because this is a homepage. I let you some time, but I hope it's all big enough, 200%. We first have a factory I extracted to do the basic HTML building for a document. And then we have a header factory, a footer factory, and a content renderer, which I all glue together here in the list. So this is basically the main content collection rendering. It's the teaser slot. And then I do render the header and the footer. Here in the HTML document factory, I'm free to, I chose to use composition instead of inheritance to set the basic HTML document with like header comment, document title, language, and all the things, to have it quite nice and precise in one place. And I don't even need inheritance for that to make everything more complex. It's way simpler to have it plain here. Also, at least I, have always been struggling in Fusion to extract common logic. All the time I build something and I reuse it, I find myself adding a new component, like a helper component eventually. And this makes no sense if you think about it, because components should be there for the presentation, and they should not be a helper for something and return just arbitrary data at all. That makes everything kind of twisted, and in the components, in the CPX components, we want to be straight declarative and just write what we want. But in the integration, we do want and need to be also imperative. This is critical. So manual method calls like these, where I have my own signature, my own typed return values, this is the heart of integration as we see it in CPX. And this has been something missing. And now you can just compose whatever you want, however complex everything is, and everything is typed and linted. So that's about here. Let's dive a little more into the footer rendering, because here we can see some nice CPX features at work. For example, typed collections. I look at the footer, I here click to co-locate this PHP file, I see the CPX file, this is the footer. You don't need to understand all the imports here, but You can see that in the line 7 and 8, in the line 6, I use a collection, and in the navigation over here, I also use a collection of navigation entries, which is a list of things. And this is actually a list. It's just not a concatenated string with all the pre-rendered things. No, this is a list of collections, and it's as typed as PHP allows it, which means it's just PHP stand types. Generics are yet to come. The integration will look as follows. If we go here, I look the usage up, I should be able to find it. And well, you can see it's a little bit too simple, you might say, implemented. I actually went the easy way and I added 3 inline editable slots, which I just insert here. But you see that I do all the manual, the hard work in the integration, where I map the node to the components, and in the rendering, I just have to deal with the components. I don't have to pass the exact shape along and then later instantiate the components. There's a lot of duplicate work always, and this is always tempting for us, or too tempting in Fusion, that if you pass already a big blob of data, you might just, how about we change just this part of the array as well, while we add it. But this often comes to this deep stack of here's something changed, there's something changed. Why not do it just in the integration and in the presentation just render it? It's just much more precise, and you don't have to watch out for anything bad. But you might ask yourself this, how about we have a list of things, which is actually a list and can contain a multitude of things? Well, just do an array map, right? There is actually no way to loop in AFX over things, because you don't need to. You would just use in the integration a for loop and create a lot of components, which you then hand over to CPX. You don't need to iterate in CPX to take some random untyped data and create components there on demand. There's no need or gain in that. Here, everything is nice and type safe, and we also set complex default values like the images dummy image HG. If you were to do this in the presentation as well, the presentation gets quickly too complicated again, and there are too many moving parts. And CPX doesn't, it's encapsulated, it can't do that. This is integration for CPX. So, that should be it about CPX and listing features. Now, how about we look a little bit into what happens, how can I actually use the type safety? You promote it so much. So if I were to open my composer lint PHP done, I see everything is fine, as it should be, because we see the rendering work. If I now add a new mandatory prop, or maybe I feel like I want to rename the content prop, or here in the text with image, yes, should be fine. I rename it to renamed. Then I build again. Shit, what is that? Composer, flow, components, build. Content is not defined. Actually, I see that someone is using properly the CPX component within my component files, which means that I cannot, no, it was before that. Not someone is instantiating it, I cannot use it in line 8. So CPX itself guarded me from doing anything stupid. But now I did something stupid, as we know. If I open the website and reload, it should crash. It should crash. Or maybe I don't use the component, that would be stupid. Cache, probably. Maybe I'm on the wrong page. Or maybe I didn't use named arguments. Maybe I didn't use named arguments. Maybe I'm fine off the hook. Let's add something more stupid. Boolean. So. Again. Flow components build. And composer run in PHP done. And yeah, runtime error. But again, this doesn't happen because because PHP stand should catch that errors, yes. So now we would go to the implementation, look at the usages, at the flag, and do the things. There, we still need to work on the tooling to improve that, but you get the grasp. There is safety provided here. You don't need to worry about that. So I will revert that first. So I have a working state again, and we go into a little bit of debugging now. Components build. So you know that components are typed within itself. So I can only use the props defined. I can only work with the types as I should. And I can, if I add new props, if I rename props, the integration crashes depending if it's using named arguments or not, and the props should be there. So here on my website, everything is fine again, but maybe I'm now here looking into the images, and I see this has a title attribute, and this doesn't. So I wonder why. And as a developer, I will debug, because I must. So now I will go to my text with image factory, or a renderer. Then I will probably try to debug, right? I will do var dump context node and die. And let's see what happens. You saw I couldn't just var dump die, right? This is cool. We cannot do that simple. And I see that, yeah, this is the first iteration I died directly. This was the second node. So now I have to do some conditionals with the if else, or why don't we use xdebug? I heard it's readily available. So if we were just to be not so obsessed with var dump die, we could just do that instead, right? Okay. Gucken. Okay, depending on your xdebug setup, this does work or does not so work. Maybe I have to look to was ist denn jetzt hier los? Warte mal. Nee, yeah, it should work, right? It's not that hard. Depending on your xdebug knowledge, you can just go in the PHP code and see the breakpoint, and it's integration, right? Everything is fun and easy. That's not so complicated. That was just, it worked earlier, trust me. Maybe it works now, actually. Yes? Yes. Okay, so debugging is technically possible, and that is it. So maybe still stick to var dump die, but it works at least, Try that in Fusion once. What have we not covered? A lot. There is still component instantiation. There is some cool new feature with Kaleidoscope that we still allow to create some factory-like components within CPX to, you can ask me about that. And there's the Neos context. We didn't get too much into detail because this is the object we pass along here with all the main information, subgraph, action request, running mode, and here you can access the Neos helpers, and yes, that's mostly it. And I can also say that everything we have done is quite good tested, as Bernhard said earlier. So we were to look in the test folder of our beautiful Neos component engine dev collection. We see a lot of Gherkin tests to highlight the importance of integration, because we don't want you to eat or try something that might just work. We want a little bit of stability here. And I can say that everything which is covered in the API, every Fusion prototype that was usually there, has its own little helper where we have the PHP code here in the Gherkin and have some test components and use the Neos API as we like, and we basically try everything through what there is to try through. So you are kind of covered and good to go. There's also a little bit more about your reusability to say as last kind of small point. You have the option now to reuse your components everywhere, which allows you to create quite easy a backend module. I mean, look at this. You have an index action, you do something with your data, you fill them in the tables, loop over some data, and render the thing out. Voila, everything is fine, and fuck. And yes. I think the 30 minutes are over.
That was great. I really like it that you're brave enough to try live coding, and we all know how that goes.
Yeah, I need a shower now.
That was good. Give him a round of applause. That was very brave. Marc Henry, I have about 10 questions for you. But we also have time, so first things first. Thanks for all the work. I like that it is type-safe and clean CPX files, but actually integrators don't need to know PHP. How will you be attracting integrators for the new way of rendering components and wiring node data?
It's just a choice of language. It's not my choice what integrators should learn, but it's PHP, it's type, there's static analysis. If you set up the project as your PHP lead and tell them a little bit about how to use PHP and work with it should be precise interfaces, you're safe, considering there's static analysis. But mostly, we might kind of also lay the integration more into backend hands with that. That might be true.
The next natural evolution of the integrator role. Learn some PHP. Okay.
It's easier to learn than Fusion. There is documentation for PHP.
Take that.
Well, there is debug support.
True developer speaking. Thank you. How well is CPX already supported by large language models? Is that a good question for you?
No.
No. Anyone else?
Next question, please.
No experience yet. Okay. How can you override something if in a specific context?
We had the question earlier, you don't override something. You replace the component. It's a new pattern. We call it feature.
Not component override, but say, for example, you've got a hero element.
Yes?
Where you want to use a button.
Can I give you the microphone so that the people on the live stream can?
So imagine you've got a hero component, and in that hero component you've got a button. And in the hero component, the button should always be a primary variant instead of secondary, ghost, whatever else is available. Because you're promoting the component by saying here button is the component button, how would you then rule out the ability to forcefully use something else?
As you have a single factory for the header factory, you put at a single place the button with the variant orange. You have this in one class. It's the concern now truly lies on the integration, that's true, but it is also just in a single place and equally safe. Safer, I'd argue, than doing magic prototype overrides and easy to follow. Bernhard might follow up on that.
As an addition, it is possible to instantiate the button from the hero component. So if you want to enforce that in the hero the button is always of a certain variant, you can instantiate it there and do it in the hero component.
Though this comes with the bargain of passing all the props again, which kind of defeats sometimes the. It's your choice. We just set some example.
Thank you very much. Are you planning on replacing the PHP integration part with CPX as well?
No, not at all. This is not at the scope. No, nine. It doesn't make sense. I elaborated earlier. React and Fusion have made the same decision with components for everything. This makes no sense in our ideas. We would use the same paradigms for two things, which are entirely different, and we don't want you to think the same way about them. They are two different concepts. Presentation, declarative, yes, and nice and distinct. Integration can do anything. No need for components here. This is a fully different architecture.
If you want to follow up on that, I think people can talk to you tonight at the social event, in breaks.
Do you have more questions?
I do have more questions, but we also do have some time.
Yeah.
So something you probably already noticed yourself, there is a question about file watcher, which recompiles or transpiles. What's the right word?
Yes, retranspiles.
Yes.
File watching, I worked on that already a little bit, but it's also not so with the flow framework. There are different ideas, like separate process, do it with the flow file watcher. Eventually we will get there, but don't worry. Currently, I'm actually built it that the PHP IDE, my PHP Storm, triggers the command again, like in old SAS times. It worked for me. Like,
if it's fast enough for you, then okay, it can work for other people too. So if you're interested in that process, talk to Marc Henry. Why are the type declarations not in the same syntax as in PHP? You used Boolean as example, but in PHP you would have to use bool.
That we can probably talk about this all day. In PHP you can use bool and Boolean. Not anymore? Then we can also we can make a vote. I don't know. who likes bool? Who likes Boolean? Okay, half. So we should choose.
No, we come up with a third alternative to confuse everyone. Okay. Why use component collection instead of creating a wrapper class per type, e.g. navigation item collection?
You can create additional collection type, but that would internally still use the collection syntax to express that this collection is a typed collection around this collection. And either your design needs that or it doesn't. But yes, so it's just a choice. You can make this collection more typed in that sense, or more bigger because it has this outer wrapping still, or you just pass the collections along. It depends on your use case. Does it make sense?
Okay. Thank you.
But you cannot, if you render the collection items, you cannot interfere here. You cannot change the order. You can count them, but that's the only thing. You can count them, or you can put them out, but you cannot work with that.
Okay, there's another question. The Neos integration service looks like a mixed bag that might become the next T3 libdiff. That seems not like a good idea.
Yes.
Shouldn't that be split by domains?
I thought about this a lot. I think we are not in the final design, and it's really hard. The CPX, which was the main focus about in the first talk and also here kind of, this is final design, kind of. We four have a quite good idea and how to work this out. Regarding the Neos integration, it's really hard to find a good compromise between what I said earlier. A front-end developer should still not cry and run away if one sees that, and a backend developer should also be able to use it. And we don't want to use too much flow magic or not too little. And let's talk about this, please, because we need a good, precise syntax that works for everyone. And yes, I'm not super happy with the back yet.
All right, thank you. And I do have a final question for you. Did you think about a style guide for CPX?
Probably it will be easy. But look at our tests. There's always there's not too much to worry about. You know, it's simple.
And it's still work in progress. So if people are really interested and want to chime in, who's working on that right now on CPX?
Wilhelm, Bernhard, me, and you can also talk to Martin, sparring partner.
So Bernhard, Martin, raise your hands. Those two guys from Zeitgeist, Marc Henry. Talk to them and be part of this community effort to, create the next evolution of rendering for Neos, right?
Thanks.
Yes. Marc Henry, thank you very much. Please rate the talk in the NeosCon app so that we can award the best speaker at the end of the next day. And if I can have the presentation here again. Thank you very much. I wanted to remind you, lightning talks. Marc Henry, lightning talks.
Should I go away?
Do you want to have one this year again?
I had so many talks today. I had one in mind. I wanted to explain simple fusion caching, but by explaining CPX caching, which is quite ironic. But I think Bernhard does it already in his talk.
So no lightning talk from you this year?
Maybe not.
So, someone else, step up, talk to Anke, submit your lightning talk. You already figured out your present, that's good.
Yes.
Thank you very much for watching. The next, can someone press the button for the next? Here on this studio stage, Alex is up next with a search talk, and on the center stage, we will have Martin and Natalie from Zeitgeist talking about the DSR Brand Hub, 30 hotels, 5 brands, 1 Neos. So enjoy your break and see you back at 4. Thank you.